I could see the flashing red and blue lights from the deck of my boat before I even heard the sirens. It was almost surreal. The sun setting behind the rolling hills of my ranch, the calm lake reflecting that orange glow, and yet here they were. 2 police cruisers crawling down the gravel path toward my private dock. All because I dared to park my boat on my own lake. I remember the moment I first saw the Homeowners Association president standing there, arms crossed, tapping at his phone like he was calling in an airstrike. He didn't know my name, not really, they never bothered to ask. To them, I was just that guy who bought the old ranch by the lake. The outsider who didn't respect their rules. But there's one thing the HOA didn't know about me. This lake wasn't just mine. I owned the entire marina they thought they controlled. But tonight, watching those cops step out of their cars, hands already on their belts, I knew I was about to find out just how far people would go to protect a lie. My dog, Duke, growled low beside me as the officers made their way down the dock. The HOA president followed close behind, his face smug, certain I was about to get dragged away in handcuffs for trespassing. I kept my hands loose at my sides, my boat keys jangling in my pocket. The water lapped gently against the hull, each wave whispering the same question in my mind. How do you prove you own what no one wants to believe you do? One of the officers raised a flashlight to my face. Sir, we need you to step off the boat. But I just smiled, because they had no clue that the deed for the entire lake, the docks, the marina store, even the launch ramp, it was all locked away in my safe, waiting for this moment. Duke let out a single, sharp bark that echoed across the water. And that's when the real trouble started. The first time I saw this place, I was 15. My grandfather had brought me here for a fishing trip. We stayed in a tiny cabin, spent hours on the water, and he told me how this lake had once been the heartbeat of our town. Back then, the marina was run by the locals, not the HOA. There were barbecues on the docks, kids jumping in the water until sunset. It felt like freedom. When Grandpa died, he left me a dusty folder with the original deeds. I was too young to care then. But when I came back as an adult after the city pushed me out with traffic and noise, this lake felt like my way back home. I bought the ranch, restored the cabins, and quietly reacquired every share of the marina that my family once owned. But the HOA hated it. To them, my land was an eyesore in their perfectly manicured neighborhood. They sent letters, fines, threats, each one more absurd than the last. I ignored them at first, thinking they'd see reason once they realized I owned more of the lake than they did. But arrogance runs deep in people who believe a piece of paper gives them power. Now, standing on my dock, I remembered all the times they'd called in complaints. My bonfires were too big, my trucks were too loud, my boat ruined the view. And now they'd crossed a line by calling the cops. The officer stepped closer, voice low. Sir, the HOA claims you're violating community rules. I held up my phone, scrolling to the digital copy of the deed. This entire marina, every slip, every dock, every foot of shoreline is mine. He looked at the HOA president who bristled like he'd been slapped. You're bluffing, he hissed. No one owns the whole marina. I locked eyes with him. You sure about that? Duke nudged my hand with his nose as if telling me to hold my ground. But in that moment I realized this wasn't just about a boat or a dock. This was about the truth they'd buried and the lengths they'd go to keep it buried. Picture prompt for prompt 2, a nostalgic lakeside memory, a teenage boy fishing on the calm lake with an old man, a small cabin in the background. Faded into the present, a man now older, standing by the same dock, holding a phone showing legal documents. The HOA president stands nearby, arms crossed, glaring. Early evening light, warm and peaceful. Prompt 3, escalation and subplots, 550 words. As the cops radioed something back to dispatch, I could see the HOA president whispering furiously to one of his board members at the end of the dock. The two of them kept glancing my way, their faces tight. That's when I remembered the rumors I'd heard at the local bait shop. The HOA had been double-dipping, renting out slips to people who never knew they didn't actually own them. They'd been pocketing the cash for years. If my deed went public, it wouldn't just ruin their power, it could land them in real legal trouble. Suddenly, I realized why they'd called the cops. They needed to scare me, push me to fold. Or better yet, make it look like I'd broken the law so they could smear my name before I spoke up. I leaned down to untie the boat line, pretending to be calm. Inside, my mind raced through every conversation I'd ever had with the old marina manager, how he told me he'd been forced out by the HOA board when they rewrote the rules. I'd thought it was just petty politics. But what if it was fraud? One of the officers stepped closer. Sir, you got any weapons on board? I almost laughed. Just fishing rods. The HOA president cut in. He's lying. Search the boat, he's probably hiding something. The cop looked at me, apologetic but firm. We have to look. I nodded, but inside my pulse thundered. What if they planted something? What if they'd already tried to sabotage me? As the officer stepped onto the boat, Duke barked and jumped in front of him. The officer backed up, hands raised. It's okay, boy, I said, pulling Duke back by the collar. But Duke's instincts were sharper than mine. He knew there was more beneath these calm waters than anyone was ready to admit. That's when my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from my neighbor, Sam. The only person in this neighborhood who'd ever been decent to me. You need to see this. Meet me behind the boathouse. Now. I looked back at the cop and the HOA president, who were too busy arguing to notice. I slipped Duke's leash back on and stepped off the boat, my boots crunching on the gravel. Whatever Sam had found, I knew one thing. This was no longer just about my boat. It was about exposing everything they'd hidden, no matter the cost. I slipped around the back of the old boathouse, heart pounding in my chest. Duke padded silently at my side, ears flicking at every rustle in the reeds. The lake looked calm under the moonlight, but my mind was anything but. Sam was waiting, half hidden behind a stack of rotting wooden crates. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, eyes darting from the water to the path behind me. He clutched a folder so tight his knuckles were white. You got followed? He whispered. Just Duke and me. What is this? Sam looked over his shoulder, then shoved the folder into my hands. It's copies of the original Marina bylaws. And payment ledgers. I found them in the attic of the old store. They've been leasing out slips they don't even own. They've pocketed thousands. I flipped through the brittle pages, my breath catching when I saw familiar names. Longtime neighbors, local fishermen, all paying rent for slips on my land. Some of the signatures were forged. The deeper I read, the more it felt like the ground under my boots might give way. You realize what this means? I said. They've defrauded half this town. Sam's eyes met mine. If you go public with this, they'll ruin you. They'll say you forged it all. You know how they spin things. My hand tightened around the folder. The moon slid behind a cloud, shadows creeping across the dock. For a second, I pictured my grandfather's face, that proud smile when he handed me the deed. He trusted me to protect this place, to keep it honest. Why now? I asked. Why help me? Sam let out a humorless laugh. Because my dad was one of them. He signed off on half these fake leases before he died. I'm done watching them poison what's left of this lake. I opened my mouth to answer, but the crack of a branch behind us made Duke growl low in his throat. A flashlight beam danced across the boathouse wall, voices, angry and hushed, drifted closer. The HOA president was out there with 2 more board members in tow. They were looking for me. Sam grabbed my arm. We have to hide this. If they catch you with it now, they'll destroy it. I hesitated, mind racing. I could stand my ground, show the cops this evidence right now, or risk losing everything if they got their hands on it first. Get to my truck, I said, pressing the folder to my chest. I'm not running. But I'm not handing them this on a silver platter either. Duke pressed against my leg, his tail stiff. The voices grew louder, closer, then stopped, just on the other side of the wall. I held my breath as a harsh whisper slipped through the night air. If he talks, we're finished. Find him. Now. In that moment, the lake seemed to hold its breath too, waiting for the storm that was about to break. I slipped back behind the boathouse, Sam hot on my heels. Duke pressed close, his low growl the only warning I needed that we were seconds away from being caught. Through a gap in the wooden planks, I watched the HOA president's flashlight beam sweep the dock. His voice like poison in the night. Spread out. He's here somewhere. I clutched the folder tight to my chest, feeling every thud of my pulse against the brittle pages. This wasn't just paper, it was proof. And they were desperate enough to destroy it, or worse. Sam tugged my arm. There's an old storm drain under the boathouse. We can stash it there. Get it later. But something in my gut twisted. If I hid it, they might find it first. If I kept it, they'd come for me. Either way, they'd win, unless I did something they'd never expect. Duke tensed. Footsteps crunched across the gravel behind the building. I glanced down at my dog's eyes, full of trust, and knew I couldn't run forever. An idea struck me like a lightning bolt. Sam, the Marina office, the security cameras. They're still hooked up, right? He looked at me like I was insane. Yeah, but they've got a live feed to the sheriff's office. If I walk in there, show the papers, and say exactly what they've done, the whole thing gets recorded. They can't bury it. Sam's eyes widened. They'll follow you. They'll try to stop you before you get inside. Then they better be fast. I tucked the folder under my jacket and jerked my chin at Sam. Stay hidden. If I don't make it, you get these copies to the sheriff yourself. Don't trust anyone else. A flashlight beam suddenly flared right through the broken slats, blinding us both. There. He's behind the boathouse. Sam bolted into the shadows as I broke into a run, Duke at my side, paws pounding the dock. Shouts erupted behind me, the HOA president cursing, his cronies crashing through the reeds. My boots slammed up the marina steps. I could see the flickering light of the office window, a single bulb hanging over the sign that still read private property, no trespassing. I'd never felt so close to losing everything or winning it back. I glanced over my shoulder just in time to see the president pull something shiny from his pocket. It glinted under the dock light, not a phone. Something metal. Something that made my blood turn to ice. He pointed it right at me. Duke lunged in front of me with a snarl. My foot hit the top step. The door was just feet away. I had one chance to expose the truth, and it was now or never. I didn't feel the dock under my boots anymore, just the thunder of my heartbeat, the cold night air burning my lungs. Duke barked once, sharp and loud, his paws skidding across the wooden steps as we crashed through the Marina office door. I slammed it shut behind us, the flimsy lock clicking into place. Outside, the HOA president's footsteps pounded up the dock, his angry shout echoing off the calm water. I grabbed the folder with shaking hands, flipping through the pages one last time to make sure they were still dry, still real. The old security camera above the cash register blinked its little red light at me like a final warning. This is it. Everything was being streamed live to the sheriff's office, no edits, no spin. Duke paced at my feet, growling low, his eyes fixed on the window. I could see shadows moving, the president and two board members arguing in hushed, panicked voices. I forced myself to breathe, stepping up to the counter where the old Marina computer still flickered. My reflection in the dusty screen was a man I barely recognized, tired, determined, ready to finish what my grandfather started. I raised the folder in front of the camera, voice clear but tight. To anyone watching this, my name's Mason Carter. This is proof the HOA's been stealing from this town for years. Forged leases. Fake fines. People paying for docks they don't even own. Outside, someone pounded on the door. Open up. Now. I didn't flinch. They tried to shut me up. But they can't buy this lake and they can't buy me. My grandfather built this marina with his own hands. He made sure it would stay in this community, not get sold off to crooks in suits. Glass cracked behind me. The window shuddered as a fist slammed into it. Duke barked, teeth bared. I held the last page up to the lens, the deed with my grandfather's signature. It's all here. I own the lake, the docks, the slips. Everything they claim is theirs. And after tonight, you'll know the truth. The front door rattled, hinges straining. The HOA president's voice was wild now, the edge of his desperation like a blade. Give it up, Mason. It's over. I stared straight into the camera. Yeah, it is. The door burst open. Light and noise crashed in as the sheriff himself stepped through. Two deputies right behind him, weapons drawn. The HOA president froze mid-lunge, that shiny metal object now clearly visible under the harsh office light. A pocket knife, half open. The sheriff's voice boomed, "Drop it. Hands where I can see them." In that instant, it was like the lake itself sighed in relief. The truth was out. No more secrets. No more lies. Duke sat at my feet, tail thumping the dusty floor. As I finally let the folder fall onto the counter. The marina was safe. The lake was safe. My family's legacy was safe because I refused to let them steal it one more time. They cuffed the HOA president right there on the dock. I watched from the marina porch, Duke leaning against my leg like he knew it was finally over. The sheriff's deputies carried out boxes of old files, hard drives, and anything else that could help prove how deep the lies went. Sam stood next to me, hands shoved into his pockets, eyes flicking between the flashing red and blue lights. He looked lighter somehow, like a weight he'd carried since his father's mistakes had finally fallen away. "You did it, man," he said, his voice barely above the lapping of the lake. "You saved this place." I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for years. "We did. And my grandfather did. He knew this lake would always bring people back to what really matters." In the morning, word spread fast. Neighbors I'd never even spoken to before came down to the docks, shaking my hand, apologizing for believing the HOA's lies. Fishermen tied up their boats and offered to help me restore the cabins. Kids ran along the shoreline like they belonged here again, not like they were trespassing on someone else's rules. I sat on the edge of the dock that evening, watching the sunset paint the lake in gold. Duke curled up beside me, finally sleeping for the first time in days. The Marina office light flickered on behind me as Sam came out, holding a new folder, this one full of honest names, real slips, real agreements that would bring the community back together the way it used to be. "It's funny," Sam said, tapping the folder. "All this started with you just parking your boat where you belong." I smiled. Sometimes it takes a little storm to clear the water. Out across the lake, the old wooden cabins reflected in the calm surface. This place didn't belong to the HOA anymore. It belonged to every family that wanted to fish off the docks at dawn, every kid who wanted to swim until their skin turned pruny, every old man who wanted to tell stories about the big one that got away. The sheriff promised an investigation. Some people will face charges. Some might try to lie their way out. But it doesn't matter now. The truth is out there for anyone to see, and this lake, my grandfather's lake, will never be theirs to steal again. I reached down, scratching Duke's ears. "Good boy," I murmured. He wagged his tail without even opening his eyes. "If you're ever out this way, you'll see my boat right where it belongs, tied up at my dock, floating free on the water I fought to protect. And if you've got something worth fighting for, don't ever let anyone tell you that you can't stand your ground. Because the truth has a way of surfacing just like this lake. Always has. Always will."